and this goes back to the analogy, you're like, we were taught color in the lines and it's only this way. And then, someone's animating. When you use the animation analogy, I thought about like, all right, so you grow up and you realize that, oh no, these are people who are creating these things.
Yes.
Or you grow up and realize wrestling's fake. It's not a real thing in politics.
And everything else. Everything that involves money is already done.
Right. So we began to see the world is not really what we've been taught.
Right.
And maybe we can stretch that into, let me explore different other options. You were saying that earlier, that there's so many other options available to us,
right.
but we've been taught it's only this way, like literally like stay within the box, break out of that box,
Y'all, I don't want a job. I don't even want a job. OMG. Please, the money. I don't want a job. I don't want to work. Just give me the money.
The job I just interviewed for at the end told me they pay $45K. The way I was holding back tears, and I am right now. Data analyst role located in New York City requires several years of experience. And I know something is better than nothing, don't get me wrong, but the salaries I have been seeing for certain jobs, I am shocked with how low they've gotten.
You could get a shoebox for $1,200 and you're sharing it with a rat these days. You understand? Things cost more, but nobody's getting paid more. If anything, we're getting paid less. And I really thought I entered adulthood all willy-nilly like, man, it's easy. Y'all tripping. What? No. No.
I find it interesting how there's still such polarization and so much debate about whether working from home or working from the office is better. My first proper experience working from home was over 4 years ago. And I realized it was so much more productive. I was getting so much done because I didn't have all these random conversations happening at the office with people that I had no interest in talking to, but just had to because they were there.
Welcome to Call for the Truth. I am LaOta of the Sun, and this is Tarvars of the Sun. And we are here today to talk about some of the current events that affect our lives, our relationships, our future, our now. We're going to talk today about what we see a lot of in the social media. We see a lot of suffering. And we're going to speak a little bit about what that looks like, what it means. Do we have to do it? Are we sentenced to a life of suffering? But before we begin, we're going to ask Tarvars if you will open with the call for the truth.
Yes, certainly. And we encourage those who are tuning in to join us in the call for the truth. Should we call forth the frequency of truth? Should we call to see the truth in all that we see? Should we call to hear the truth in all that we hear? Should we call to speak the truth, calling forth the courage to speak the truth? Should we call forth nothing less than the truth to come forward into our experience? And maybe the truth can help people relieve some suffering.
Yes.
Because again, this is what we're experiencing, suffering everywhere.
Yes.
Even the Buddhist talks about life is suffering. And I'm like, man, but it don't gotta be that way. I've had this idea to create a t-shirt that says, I choose to learn without suffering.
Yes.
Because there has to be some type of alternative, right?
Yes.
But oftentimes people don't think that there's an alternative to the suffering within a myriad of different experiences. But you want to go ahead and kick this off?
Yes, I think I'd like to bring back recent history. And up until about 3 years ago, schools went on as they had gone on historically. People got in their cars and went into rush hour to their jobs. People graduated from school and got hired by companies. And the mechanisms of Western civilization and all over the world continued in their process with very little thought of options. Because of the events that happened in the last few years that disrupted the patterns, the social patterns of humanity, suddenly we find ourselves no longer satisfied with what was the status quo. We don't want to get up and get dressed and go into the office. A vast majority of people have stopped doing that. Some people are working every day, but they're only working with a shirt and a jacket and no pants. Some people
Yeah.
People are finding ways to have alternate experiences where they can make dinner and take care of their children and still be online and produce an income for themselves. So people are finding ways to have employment that satisfies some of the responsibilities they have, but different ways of doing it in an environment that just a few years ago, it would not be conceivable that such a thing could have happened. Everybody understood you're going to be in a job 9 to 5. You're going to be in rush hour traffic. When you get hired, that 40 hours a week, you have to include your drive time or your travel time. And you're going to need money for your wardrobe because you have to look a certain way in the workplace. Well, now in the advent of meetings on Zoom, people could only see you from the
Just
chin up or
sports coat.
or
That's
just
it.
from your shirt up, and it's become less formal. And things are still, the world is still moving. It is still changing. And this change in how we work, how we see ourselves, the level of our suffering is changing rapidly. So this should give us pause to consider that if it's changed this much in just a few years, how much more could we change this and morph this into something of our own making instead of kind of a remnant of a relic of what was left over from another event. So we couldn't go out. And so this is like what was left over. So that's what we have now. But it's working to our benefit because we're no longer single-minded. Now we have options. So what do you think of that?
I think options are nice. Again, people who once at one point in time, they, again, as you said, kind of stuck in going to work, come home. This is 2020, to be clear. And we realize, okay, we don't have to do that. We can drop ship products from Amazon, all from the comfort of our home, or we could start a business using AI or practitioners doing long distance healing work, etc. There's a lot that's happening. People are making money just straight off of social media. So we're in a definitely a new time, which required us to think differently. And the circumstance created it. But I kind of want to spin back to, we were speaking in the last podcast, and we encourage you to check this out because in the last podcast, we were talking about the suffering that's happening as it relates to work. And you were referencing, matter of fact, we played a little video we were watching with our camera lady, this girl just crying about how she doesn't want to work a job. And also touching the pulse out there, people see that prices are increasing for the cost of living. Wages aren't really increasing. And so there's this buildup of suffering happening everywhere. But even still, in that, there's a choice. There's an option. Just like with what we saw with the 9 to 5, there are options. We don't have to do things the way how they always been. And so just focusing in, and not just job related, but anything, realizing that I can choose to go through this experience without it being painful.
Yes.
Which that in and of itself can change the dynamic of the experience because of our perception and our level of engagement with the thing. So I definitely see the need for it, especially in a time where there's a lot of pain everywhere, in terms of living life on this planet.
It's interesting. What came to mind was we are in the healing business. We are in the clearing business. We are in the counseling business. And for us, the options have remained the same. But I have noticed that many of the medical professionals, there's much more telemedicine. When you want to talk to a counselor, you don't have to come to my office and lay on my couch. You can lay on your couch and I'll just put you on a video conference and we can talk if you want to lay down and do it.
Even the judicial system is like that now.
And now, yes, and so if you go to court, that can be done that way. We already operate from the point of view of have operated for a long time, decades, from the point of view of not having to go to a location to do the kind of work we do with clearing properties and clearing individuals. So we were already in that level of freedom. However, we're noticing that the third dimensional world is moving through these barriers of being able into more quantum space where everything is not zeros and ones, where everything is not, you have to do it this way, you must look this way, you must work this way, you won't get hired if you don't submit to this level of experience. So that is freeing, and there are pain points in the transition. So some people are suffering because jobs are changing. And so in the change, they may have to reinvent themselves, or they may have to reconceive of what is possible to be done. One of the solutions I'd like to offer is that find other people who are in a similar circumstance. Meet up with others who can join, and you can have the power of a collective instead of the power of an individual, so that you may come together and bring your ideas to life with more energy from the energy of a collective instead of just one person. And that applies to childcare, it applies to rent, it applies to working in a particular field. We are all pieces of part of a puzzle. We are all part of everything that exists. We are fractals, we are holograms, we are an aspect of everything that exists. And within us is the whole of it, but we also get to be the piece, the linchpin that may make something work. So I think this idea of looking at what has happened as a disaster, we could flip the script and see it as a golden nugget. We could flip the script and see it as, oh my goodness, the jail cells all opened up. We don't have to be in jail. We have an opportunity to create a new tomorrow. We have an opportunity to reorganize ourselves into like-minded groups and move forward with things that we want to do, that are in our own best interests, that are in our family's best interests, things that will help humanity. So the suffering or the pain point could be flipped into a situation where you choose, I choose not to suffer that. I'm going to do this instead of that because that hurts and this doesn't. And that wasn't really an option previously. Are you kind of remembering back when you didn't have the options that...
I mean, I think that's across the board in everything, not just work related, living with people, just everyday experiences that we have where we have flare-ups with emotion. Think about when a person's driving down the street.
Yes.
You can choose to suffer in traffic. You can choose to suffer if somebody cut you off, or not.
Right.
It doesn't have to be that way, but we oftentimes don't see that there's an option. And so always this type of being control and our state of being dictated by the outside circumstance. And I think most certainly the collective field of the typical behavior, how people respond to things.
Yeah.
Like, for example, we just had someone, another son, honor, respect, and gratitude to Donna Cornell. She transitioned, and this idea of her daughter didn't have to suffer. But usually when people die, it's like, oh, my baby, throwing yourself on the casket and this grief. But when you understand more of the nature of reality, which our truth is that we don't die, we multiply. Meaning, we have another experience after this, whether we're coming back here or going elsewhere, this is not the end. And we've been here a lot too. So if that is your truth, why is there suffering? And so, but there's that pull of what people typically do, and I do see the necessity to challenge that, challenge that reality where, again, it doesn't have to be painful. It can be a glorious experience that's elevated.
I think that's so important, and it also touches on this idea that, who are we to decide what's going on with someone else when we don't have all the facts? Like, we don't know why you're leaving here right now. We don't know what that means in the greater dynamic of the eternal nature of humanity. We're not, what is it that we should decide that we should be low vibrational and sad and upset and grieving when we don't really have enough information to know if that's an appropriate response? If
That's right.
it's a matter of course. We do it because everybody else does it and because we don't really know what to do. I have found that most people don't know what to do in cases where they don't really have a strong emotion, which is okay.
Yeah. But then they also feel that pull. It's like, I don't feel anything, but I don't know. People are typically crying, and then they question me, are you okay? Because you're not emotional. So maybe they're just holding it in when
And like,
that's not
what
even the
is
truth.
wrong with you because you're not upset? Why aren't you low vibrational? Why aren't you upset? Why aren't you depressed? Why aren't you all the things that I think and I judge that you should be in any given circumstance? Why aren't you upset that you're not working? Why aren't you upset that you're not in traffic? How come you're not upset that you're not buying suits to
Because
wear to
I
work?
choose not to suffer. Got to make that a shirt.
So the message that we want to convey today is that you may choose. There is always an option. We are not saying that any of the things we've mentioned are wrong or shouldn't take place. We're just saying there is a choice. And if you have a bias in one direction, have you considered the choice? Have you considered that you may choose to see it a different way? That just like what looked like something 3 or 4 years ago looks like something very different today to most people. So in this time where we are being inundated with the truth of so many events, so much history, so much of that has been denied us or that has been kept from us, we encourage you to be open to the new environment of freedom that is coming forth through social media, that is coming forth through archaeological investigation, that is coming forth through government whistleblowers, that is coming forth through events that we thought were one thing and were something different. There's opportunity in this for expansion. There's opportunity in this for growth. There's opportunity to break out of a prison of only understanding what is on the reel in front of you. Like if you were a child and somebody had a movie playing and all you could see and all you could understand is just whatever is playing in the cartoon that's playing in front of you, and that's your entire world, we find ourselves in that circumstance. And the world is greater, bigger, larger. And many of us will be like, no, I want things to be the way I always wanted them to be. I understood that was how it was supposed to be. You're supposed to stay in the green lines of the green pictures, and you're supposed to paint the yellow pictures yellow and the green ones green and the red ones red, and don't color outside the lines. Don't tell me it could be different. I'm very comfortable with what I already know. We encourage you that this leads to suffering, that it is important to want to grow and want to expand, to want to be free of pain, to want to be free of suffering, but you may have to push yourself a bit to find out how is it that I can do that. But the question could be, how can I solve my problem for income if I don't work for someone else? What would that then lead me to do? And where does that take you with your individual skills and your individual gifts? We're really just encouraging you to know there's always an option, that you can choose not to suffer. Vibration. We are a universal remedy of support, an ally infused with positive frequencies and biophotonic light particles, intended to return one to the greater whole of one's organic nature. Within our layered structure exists an opportunity for metamorphosis, prompting divine healing energies of light to awaken your original composition, that which has been irritated by inorganic substances through mental, emotional, and physical material. We are navigators those who operate by way of your conscious thought and directive, exponentially moving to the physical areas of stuck emotion within the body that are in need of restoration. When engaged with us, we identify and mirror the called upon frequencies of lower vibratory notion for it to see itself in transmutation, while awakening that which is dormant to shift into the rectification of optimum balance and functionality.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's so much that you said, and especially the analogies, but this idea of what is it that we have to offer the world, and when we act on it, in contrast to working a regular 9 to 5, you're not suffering. So like what we do, we're not suffering.
No.
We're in service. We want to be in service. This actually is, it gives a form of nutrition and sustenance to the soul. Like I literally have energetic highs where I don't want to eat because I feel like I'm eating through the engagement of what I do for a living, and I find that it's important for people to figure out what that looks like, maybe take a moment to sit and imagine, like, dang, what would it look like if I was living in my highest excitement, or maybe in service, this idea of what the world needs, and how can I start stepping into that? And because there's people at different levels, right?
Yeah.
People who still have to work the job but while you're working the job, are you exploring these concepts?
Yes.
Because it's, again, the idea that you were saying about, I don't have to suffer, I can choose not to, but some of that means like taking certain actions to move you out of the suffering.
Yes.
Right. And exploring the different options, the possibilities. And this goes back to the analogy. You're like, we were taught color in the lines and it's only this way. And then, someone's animating. When you use the animation analogy, I thought about, like, all right, so you grow up and you realize that, oh no, these are people who are creating these things.
Yes.
Or you grow up and realize wrestling's fake. It's not a real thing. In politics.
And everything else. Everything that involves money is already done.
Right. So we began to see the world is not really what we've been taught.
Right.
And maybe we can stretch that into, let me explore different other options. You were saying that earlier, that there's so many other options available to us, but we've been taught it's only this way, like literally, like, stay within the box, break out of that box,
And we are a part of all that is. It would be hard for a person to think for a moment and not recognize in a closed system on a planet where we represent the periodic table, and we are the periodic table, that we would not be part of everything that exists.
Right. We just like one element. It can only be one element. It's
We're
only
not
hydrogen.
just the carbon that they want to get rid of. We're not just that.
Right.
although we are that. We're not just that. The pain and the suffering that we feel happens through, this is the birth of a new world. This is like childbirth. It doesn't have to hurt, but if we knew that what was on the other side of it would be what we choose to manifest. If we have a strong desire, and if we don't, there'll be varying degrees of what we manifest and what we participate in. What could we be of service to? We encourage, find the space where you're willing to do something to support and be responsible for self. And in that, it's not work anymore. It's then something else. So we are in the business of helping people find these kinds of solutions through exploration of their unique qualities and abilities. Recently, Tarvars has been fasting. He's been doing some detoxing of social media, and so he has found something interesting. Would you share?
Yeah. So one of the things that I realized with the fasting from social media, I mean, there's so many different things, but my original reason was I saw the time and the energy that one invests in it. And if I want more control over my day and my time, that means I need to sacrifice, or which sacrifice doesn't have to be a painful thing. We were
Right.
discussing that earlier. And oh my gosh, it's life changing. So I engage with social media from the perspective of not so much let me mindlessly consume, but let me search for things that are conducive to my personal goals. So it's been more so for research, primarily restricted to YouTube, and then in other well, blog platforms if I'm looking for information. But then I allowed myself a little bit of time to explore, and it wasn't until I got into the mode of I'm just mindlessly swiping. Energetically, I felt the pull. I could feel this the the intelligence of the field pulling on my life force, and I was like, I'm gonna be mindful of my language, but I was like, no, we're not doing that. And so I saw the difference between when you consciously engage with this versus you just kind of allow it to consume you. But ultimately, my fasting helped me release the suffering from that experience.
Yeah.
I know most people may not perceive it as that, and they're like, oh, I like it and it's fun, but there's a lot of science done on how this messes up the brain, and it changes us, it messes with our hormones and the dopamine that's released and serotonin. And as I fasted from that, there were simpler things that I began to engage with, like smiling, and how I naturally release hormones from doing that, or just being outside in nature, tending to the garden, starting the garden, because I got a lot of plants out there right now that we're working with. And again, it gave me a sense of control, but it was a shift in perspective, also a pulling back from the field, because everybody's on it. It's just what we do. But it's a choice, and now I'm living a different experience because I chose not to suffer.
And the same thing happens in any level of fasting. When you pull back from the thing that you have overindulged in, then like if you pull back from prepared food or processed food, you taste how chemical it feels and tastes in your mouth. When you're eating it, I can remember when I stopped eating salad at restaurants that had chemicalized it, because I wasn't really aware of it. But as I ate more and more salad and then went back to it, I could taste the chemicals on the lettuce.
Yeah.
And it was very obvious, but it had escaped me during the time. So whenever we pull back a bit, whether it's a toxic relationship or whether you and your phone have gotten more intimate than you should be, like you're asking it to manage your social life and tell
Hey Siri, block them for me.
yeah, when you have turned over all of the responsibility and your will to take care of things to your phone, to navigate where you're going, to remember all your numbers, to provide you with entertainment, to lay next to you on the pillow, to wake you up in the morning, to maybe you're programming it to say nice things to you. I'm not really sure. But these are all things that if you were to take a moment and fast from them, you would find that the constant endurance with them is a form of suffering. And that when you stop, it is not, even though it is sacrifice, it's not necessarily suffering to bring your brain back to balance.
It don't take long either.
Yeah.
It don't take long. And I did it for a solid week. And I was in awe of like how quickly I could feel the balancing taking place. I'm doing other things, like I'm breathing and I'm exercising, but it works. And I will say, speaking back on the suffering, the algorithm, what I notice is when I'm scrolling, it's in hopes of, I'm suffering because the algorithm isn't sending me the things that I typically would like. And I'm in hopes that maybe I'll get a hit of some great information or something that's happening in the world. And I'm seeing nothing but stuff that just don't resonate. So I got tired of that and chose to pull back. So it don't take much.
But it's really interesting if we followed our own thoughts. If we're in traffic and we're disgusted because we have places to go, we have to go to the bathroom, we're not going to be able to get out of traffic. If we followed our thought and just said, no, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
But we don't, because the pressure of what was kept us in that circumstance. Now, if you're in traffic, it may be because that's the thing you need to do, or you like to drive, or whatever it is. But this idea of taking back your freedom, taking back your sovereignty, taking back your choices. There are choices. There are always options.
I got a little comment on the traffic thing. I remember being in traffic one day, and many people know about Atlanta traffic, and there's really nowhere for me to go. And it was on the main road, not on the expressway. And I sat there and I looked around and I said, this is hell. However, I am not going to suffer. I choose not to suffer, and I brought myself into a happy space. I don't remember exactly what I did, but I know one thing: I was not suffering it. I was like, we're going to get there. This is where I'm supposed to be. What's going to be will be. It's all right, And something like that, having that shift in perspective, pops us out of the soup of suffering that everybody else is in. We don't have to have that happen. And next thing I know, I'm home.
That is such an excellent solution. I think we can end on that this is what we would recommend, that you have the option to change your thinking. You have the option to flip the script. You have the option to decide this circumstance is not going to be the master of me. I will master this situation. I'm going to think happy thoughts. I'm going to sing songs.
That's right.
I'm going to call people. I'm going to do whatever it is that I want to do and use the time. I think this is an excellent solution. I hope you will all benefit from it. And we're going to ask Tarvars to pull a card from the deck of Call for the Truth cards. And you may shuffle as well.
Yes. So I'm going to be asking the deck to show us the truth as it relates to releasing suffering or choosing not to suffer.
So as usual, our Call for the Truth cards are always so on target. So it'll be interesting today. I love the point at which we got that we are the masters of our reality. We may manifest what we want in the moment by just changing our perspective.
The theme is freedom. If your hands are closed, you will not receive. Let go of whatever you think you have so that you can receive more. I don't even want to say anything else. What do you have on this?
This is freedom and sovereignty are one and the same thing. And we're moving into a time in creation where the opportunity for all to be free and sovereign souls as we were created exists, but it cannot happen if we keep ourselves in our self-imposed prisons of suffering. So you are encouraged to disobey that thought. Refuse to suffer. Thank you. We give you the greetings of In Lakesh and Veritas, which is oneness and truth, with honor, respect, and gratitude.